Hello, everybody. My name is Steve, and I'm here with my wife, Brandy.
Hello.
And we're here with also Stacey's All Booked and the author of Blacktongue Thief, Christopher Buehlman. So thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So this is the first book of yours that I've read, and I knew you as like a horror author, so I was surprised to have such a funny fantasy book. Was it something that you wanted to venture out on and try something different, or what was your inspiration for writing a book like Blacktongue?
Right. Well, as you note, I had written 5 horror novels before, and I really enjoy horror. Um, but horror novels can be very tonally similar to each other. And after 5 of them, I was ready to try something else. And I was talking with my agent about it, and she said, "Well, what other genres do you like?" And I said, "I really like fantasy." So she said, "Would you like to try a fantasy novel?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I would. Would you like to represent one?" She said, "Yes." So so it began, and and it makes sense. I mean, I don't read only horror novels, so why would I only write them?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are reading Between Two Fires in October, so we're looking forward to that.
Ooh, I'll be happy to join you for that too. That's
Awesome.
one of my favorites.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to hold you to that, so be careful
Okay.
what you tell us.
All right.
Stacey, did you have a question? I know Stacey's a huge fan of Blacktongue.
Oh, I am. I really loved it. I am kind of new to like the grim, dark, or even dark fantasy genre, and Steve has actually been introducing me to a lot of different books. And what I loved about Black Tongue Thief was the amount of humor that kind of broke up the grimness, and there was no lack of darkness in the book at all, but just the main character kind of he making fun of himself and the events that are going on in his life. I just loved it. It just made me smile, and it was so much fun. Quick question for you though. You say that you don't only read horror. So what is your favorite fantasy? That you've read?
Well, that's hard to pick. I've had different favorites at different times. Like as an adolescent, I really loved Tolkien, and as a preteen or child, I loved Tolkien as well. The Hobbit. Um, I'd have to say that pound for pound overall, my favorite fantasist is probably Martin. I really haven't found anything that tops Game of Thrones overall. For just depth of world building and wonder and outrage. He's really good at making you feel outrage. Um, so yeah, Martin's probably on top, but Joe Abercrombie isn't too far behind. He's very grim dark. I'm sure Steve's told you about him, and very funny. So he's definitely a guy I look for when I can't wait for the wisdom of crowds to come out. I'm eagerly anticipating that.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Oh, so how different was your writing process to write a book like Blacktongue Thief, coming from writing a bunch of horror novels? Did you have to change your writing process drastically to change the tone and to have a different approach to it?
Uh, Not really. I mean, the tone was different, but I mean, I tend to just let my characters talk,
Mhm.
and this one was funny. So it wasn't. It was no harder. If anything, it was easier
Hmm.
because horror is very binary. It's like comedy. It works or it doesn't. Um, and if you've made the covenant with your reader through the packaging of the book and the premise of the book that you've got a horror novel, you've got to maintain at least an atmosphere of dread, or you know you have to have chills every once in a while, or maybe a thrill. um, it's sort of like building a fun house. You have to have freaky stuff happen every once in a while. You can't just save it all for the end, or something. So in that way, it's a little bit like a song, or like a form poem. It has requirements. Um, fantasy is much more free verse. It's much more open, as long as you're telling a compelling story and you're following, you're using the elements of good story building that go across all genres. Like compelling characters and a character arc and structure, and it's the process wasn't that different. It was just freer.
I have a question about the style, the style choices you made in this book, like your writing style. You, as Stacey has mentioned to me too before, kind of break the fourth wall. Is that a stylistic choice you make in a lot of your books, or was this the first time for that? And it was brilliantly done, by the way.
Oh, thank you. This is my third first-person narrative. Those Across the River is first person, and so is The Lesser Dead. I know that. So when you say break the fourth wall, I'm trying to think if there's any way in which you can
Kind of-
have. I'm trying to remember if my narrator in Those Across the River broke the wall. Are you talking about?
I just mean like he talks to us as the reader a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. I did. Yeah, I didn't. I guess Frank Nichols didn't really do that in Those Across the River, but Joey Peacock in The Lesser Dead did.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I've done it before. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes people do that and it's not great. I mean, it feels weird, but this came across really well. It was really well done.
Thank you.
And it happened early in the story, so you almost had a connection to the character as the narrator. Like he was telling you the story. You felt like you were involved in the adventure. I really liked it. And it was funny, so it was also comedic, the way that he addressed the reader.
Yeah, I wanted it to feel intimate, and I wanted his tone to be humorous, because he had to sort of leaven the grimdark elements that are definitely there in the world. It's a bleak world.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got the right person with you, then almost anything can be a good time.
Yeah. And it made sense for his character. So sometimes you might read grimdark and they'll try and throw in comedy in there to lighten the mood, but it doesn't make sense for the characters. Or it doesn't make sense for what's happening. But he was always constantly like, you know what? I know that shit sucks here, and I'm just trying to get one day at a time. So for me, I'm going to use humor to help myself, and the reader is enjoying it, but it's just kind of his personality and who he is, and it was great. I loved it. I think that was my favorite part of the book, was just laughing along with the character, and just the way he lightened the mood, and he used his humor to connect with the other characters in the story as well. It just made sense for him, and I loved it.
I'm glad. He was a lot of fun to write, and once I decided that his god would be a god of mischief, the door was fully open.
Yes.
And we read a lot of fantasy books. We have lately, and one of our complaints with some of the fantasy books is that there's so many characters. And what I liked about Blacktongue is that it was pretty contained. There was enough to where you got a sense of the world, but there wasn't just characters everywhere and you had to change your focus. Was that something you set out to do, or just happened that way?
It just happened naturally, but it's a good reflection of how I like to read. I mean, even though I gave you the examples of Martin and Abercrombie, who have large casts, I really do enjoy a tighter camera, and it can be daunting, to pick up a new fantasy book, and not only do you have all this lore, and war and history to absorb, but you've also got to remember all these messed up names. So yeah, I didn't really want to do that but also that's also a function of first person, because he's only got so many people in his crew. When you're doing a third person sort of tripping around to different different characters. Again, to use the example of Game of Thrones, I mean, each of the siblings is having their own whole adventure with full casts of characters around them, and there's 5 siblings. So it's just Kinch. It's just Kinch and what he knows and who he talks to and what he's heard, which is limiting, and the limiting is good and bad. It presents obstacles. It's going to be harder to talk about large world events happening that he's not privy to.
I really liked the magic in the story. And it wasn't a hard magic system, but it was, I don't even know how to explain it. I just really liked the tattoos, how the magical tattoos. By the way, that was the giant raven, the best animal companion I've read in a grimdark novel by far.
Awesome.
Loved. I can't remember the bird's name, but I loved that. And then the way that the bird would go back into her and everything, and then how the horses in the giant, all that, the magical tattoos was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, you should put a spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hopefully nobody's watching.
Yeah, usually Steve puts out that
spoiler. Yeah.
we're gonna have a full spoiler discussion here.
Okay.
Before you started writing this book, did you kind of set the table for what kind of world and different creatures and the magic system? Did you kind of have that in mind before you started putting the characters into it, or did you just kind of flow all as you went?
It kind of all flowed together. I really started with a situation, as I often do, like with Between Two Fires. It starts with there's a situation. I've got the opening scene is 4 brigands, broken down, weary brigands in a barn, and a little 11-year-old girl pokes her head in the door to ask them to help her with something. And one of the brigands has very bad habits with younger females, and another of the brigands has just about had his fucking fill of that from that one. So that was the sort of opening exercise. And this one, I had an opening exercise of, okay, we've got a thief character, and he's waiting with a party of again, brigands, highwaymen, and here comes somebody, and they're going to ambush them, but it's the wrong person. And the first time I wrote it third person, and it was, it was bloody and bleak, and I thought, well, just for fun, why don't I try that scene again? But I'll have the thief tell the story, and that's when I first found Kinch's voice, and I was immediately hooked. So,
yeah, the first line of the book where he says I think he said he nearly died, and he nearly died with bastards or something like that.
I was about to die with bastards.
Yes, I loved it. That's a great way. First lines when they're done right, and that's really all you need, that first line.
Sure.
I was ready to read that book after that first line. I didn't even know what it was about. Steve said, "Hey, we're reading this." I read the first line. I was like, "You got it."
Cool. Very gratifying to hear.
I did not expect it to be so funny. It was a breath of fresh air for us because we've been reading a ton of fantasy. So it was a fantasy book, but it had a lot of breaks of humor in it, and it was a really nice break from all the heavier fantasy books that I enjoy. But it was nice to have just a little breather.
I understand what you're talking about. You can easily get into a run of fantasy novels where you have 4 or 5 protagonists in a row who are misplaced children of kings or queens or emperors trying to make their way to the throne, and people have to die along the way, and everything's evil, or you have some evil empire that's got to come down or whatever. There's always some high stakes world shattering thing going on, and I just wanted to tell a story about a guy who's in debt to his guild and has to get out of it. You know, it's kind of more blue collar
Mhm.
fantasy, if you will.
Yeah, more ground level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Stacey had a question about Renaissance fairs for you. Is that right, Stacey?
Yeah, I was wondering, I know that you started there before you became an author, and I was wondering how much influence, being in character yourself weekend after weekend inspired your writing.
I'm sure that the fact that I want to write fantasy and the fact that I wanted to do Ren fairs and the fact that I enjoy reading history are all just come from how I'm wired. I will say that I certainly got a lot of detail that I wouldn't have necessarily known about historical and fantasy characters and that their level of technology. Just little things like, when you're oiling your boots, if you oil them and then put them out in the sun, it'll heat up and it'll soak in the oil better. What it feels like to shoot a bow. I mean, those are things I might not have picked up had I not been involved with fairs. I did a fair amount of stage combat as well, so I've choreographed fights with rapier and dagger or longsword or staff or a variety of different weapons, even pole arms. So anything I had my characters holding or using, I've held or used, not in earnest for my life, thank God, but at least in the context of trying to present historical fighting to an audience.
That's really cool.
That is really cool. So I know that Renaissance festivals usually run Saturdays and Sundays. So what do you do the rest of the week?
Well, I found the perfect combination. I write, and I'm still working at fairs, as you know. So generally, my week is 2 days of, like here at Sterling, I'm doing a show called Filthy Irish Stories, and I play Christoph the Insulter at other fairs.
Nice.
So 2 days of doing blue humor, and then 5 days of writing. Part of my writing discipline is trying to get to the gym for an hour a day or walk or something, because it's a very sedentary job and I really like my food and booze and
Yes.
just to stay ambulatory. It requires a certain tithe.
Do you have any other inspirations for this story? Just the fact that you used a thief and a thieves guild. Was there anything that inspired you to go that route? Like anything that you read or that you watched? Or
I enjoy shoplifting. No kidding.
any crimes you committed? No.
Any pranks I pulled? Yeah. What could I say? Well, I'll tell you. A big inspiration for me, and I have not done it for many years, but when I was 13 through 19, I did almost nothing but play role-playing games. I was really absorbed into it to the extent, because I also had aspirations toward writing. I actually made a conscious decision to stop playing role-playing games when I was 19, because I wasn't gonna write, and I started trying to develop my discipline then. So in a way, I think of this fantasy series as my chance to DM again. It's like I'm a frustrated game master who is finally getting to lead a rather large campaign.
Well, we were exactly the same way, and as our we had kids and stuff, we stopped playing so many role-playing games. But the two of us reading this book, we're telling each other, I feel like I'm in that game. I feel like, because the guild and there's thieves and goblins and just different games we've played. And I'm so glad you said that, because I just felt like it just brought me back to some of that.
Very immersive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping to have it ready by this summer, but because of the pandemic, I had to stop play testing. But starting tomorrow night, I'm going to be working on Towers again because it's actually a game, and but I have not released it yet because I just want to make absolutely sure I've locked down the rules, to be the most fun that they can be.
Oh, that'll be
So
fun.
cool.
That'd be
Yeah,
really cool.
it's a pretty fun game. My one complaint with it as it is, it's a little complex to learn, but it's addictive, and one of the things I love about it is that there are so very many ways to win and lose, and unlike so many other games, you know where you have a sense, like Monopoly, there's always that point where you're like, well, this isn't fun anymore,
Yeah.
but you're crushing my balls. But Towers is like, you could think you're kind of down and out, but then somebody was bluffing and didn't have coins or bees, to fuel their master's cards, or it's crazy stuff happens in that game.
Yeah, the detail that was in the book for the game, I thought there has to be some kind of plans to have this as either a card game or some kind of online game. So I'm glad you said that, because that was one of my questions about it.
Yeah.
It's fun too, because the towers are used to, if you haven't got a tower, your archers could shoot your kings and queens and such, right? But sappers can take out the towers, and you need coins to run things, but thieves can steal the coins and the bees. So, man, there's just so many ways it can go haywire. The trader card can come and scoop the king. The queen can find the trader card. Death in the first rounds. If you get death in your hand, it's horrible because it means that your highest card has died. But then when you go to the war round, if you get the death card, you actually get to just use the death card. And if you drop the death card on somebody, because the tower could shelter an unlimited number of cards if it's got a coin rather than a bee. But if you've got all your people stacked in a tower and somebody drops death on it, it kills everybody in the tower.
Wow, that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah,
That is only fun.
We love a complicated board game.
Yeah, we love card games. So
Yeah.
It feels a little like somewhere between chess and Stratego meets Magic, or that old simple game War you used to play with a deck. But it definitely feels like a battle with cards.
Mm-hmm.
You had me at Magic.
But throw in the money element, and I can see where we get real cutthroat.
Yeah, we've had many games of Magic over the years. And Stacey, you listened to the audiobook, right?
I did, and I really liked it. The narrator did a fantastic job, and but I read along with it, so I really like being able to listen to audiobooks and read along. It just adds that level, another level of immersion into the story. But yeah, the narrator did a great job.
I'll have to make sure they hire him again.
He was hilarious. I started out just reading, and then I started because Stacey suggested, and he's hilarious. Was it him singing the song too? All the songs. Oh, no. I was wondering if it was the same guy. Oh wow, the singer was great too. I loved it.
I liked. Now you just brought that up, Brandy. I've forgotten about that. I really liked that. Why did you choose to put so many songs in there? A lot of times that's one of their biggest issues with Lord of the Rings, for example, is all of the songs. And so I was curious. This is the first time I've really seen a modern fantasy do something like that.
Well, if you're going to put songs in there, they can't be too long, and they need to be good. So, what are you going to say?
They were good.
Nothing against Tolkien, but I mean, he was inventing a whole new form. He was doing something nobody had done before. So he was populating a world. So yeah, there are some pretty long ass songs, happening in there, and I liked a lot of them. I remember when I was a kid, I really enjoyed the ones in The Hobbit, like 15 birds and 5 fir trees. Their feathers were fanned in a fiery breeze. That's fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I it just felt natural to me. And like, I guess that's another thing coming from the Renaissance Festival background. I'm so used to songs being part of that world, and I know that back in the day when they didn't have television and they couldn't, hardly anybody ever got to go see a play, unless actors came by in a wagon. I mean, your entertainment was telling stories and making music.
Mm-hmm.
So it just would have felt unnatural not to have some songs in that world.
That was great.
Yeah, I liked it.
So speaking of this world, I'm hoping that we'll have a follow-up. Do you have a plan for how many books the series will be?
Right now, the plan is for 3, and I am at work on number 2 now, and I'm hoping to have a rough draft in by December.
That's exciting.
But the book won't be out until 2023 because Tor likes to do things a little further out just to give them a buffer, but and also give them time to prepare the ground, which they're pretty good at.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
I think I can wait till 2023. I've been waiting 10 years for George R.R. Martin's 6 book. So.
Yeah, and Ross
Patient.
too. It's been 10 years since Wise Man's Fear came out, I think.
Yeah, I've given up on that though.
One of these days.
One of these days.
Yeah. Well, we know that you have to get back to insulting people at the fair, so we don't want to keep you too long. But we really do appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us about your book. We all really enjoyed it.
Yes.
So it was a really fun adventure to go along on.
I'm delighted to hear it. And do get in touch with me in October when you guys are ready to talk about Between Two Fires.
Yeah, we sure will. Yeah, we have a few of us already ready to read it. It's on my shelf behind me already, so it's gonna be a good time. But I'll be in touch.
Okay,
Thanks,
sounds good, Steve.
Christopher.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You guys take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Awesome. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Stacey, you want to give your final thoughts on Blacktongue Thief? Now that Christopher's gone, you can see all the terrible things you wanted to say.
Yeah, all the horrible things. It was so bad I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I just loved everything about it. The fantasy elements were so well done. The world building. I may have wanted to know more about the world, but I think it being a first book, especially a first book in a trilogy, there's more I expect to get more out of the next books. But the characters, I loved all of the characters. They were all unique. Fantasy, it's kind of a hit or miss when you choose to go first person. So I was really surprised how well that was done and how much I loved following Just Kinch. And he was also one of these characters where you're not really sure you're getting the truth out of everything, and so it was always fun when something would happen and he'd miraculously get out of a situation and you're like, I wonder if that's how it really happened. And it was just fun, like if you were sitting around a campfire listening to him tell you the story and you're going, yeah, okay, sure, that's what happened. But I really had a blast. And Ashley, you need to read it.
Yeah, you'll love it, Ashley. It'll crack you up.
And I won't give too much away, but there's something that happens towards the end where he gives an explanation, and you get the impression that's not really what happened because he mentions if you believe that, then something. I forget exactly what he says, but
I know
You know
exactly
what part
what
he's
you're
talking about?
Yeah.
It's pretty.
I was like, phew. And then he says, if you believe me. I'm like, oh, man. It's so good. It was so good. It was so funny.
Really funny. So I give it 4 out of 4. At the end, I was a little confused at the end. I had to reread a few of the portions of it because I got a little lost, but it was a really fun ride the whole way. And I love the Kraken and the goblins, and the chapter names were really funny. So, I mean, there was a lot of laugh out loud moments in this one. So It was a really welcome break from all the other fantasy we've been reading.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I gave it 4.5 out of 5. I put 4 though on my Goodreads review, but it was really close to 5 for me. It was funny. But I did get confused in some areas, just like Steve was saying, and had to ask Steve, did that really just happen? Or the ending was a little confusing to me too. I had to kind of go back over it, but that's nitpicking.
You have to circle back.
I had to circle back. It was good. It was good to laugh so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say that the second half moved way faster than the first half, which did make it confusing because once they got to that, after the goblin ship, like everything just was like back to back to back to back, and you're not really weren't it was hard to follow. I had to slow down the audiobook significantly so that I could make sure I was catching it all. My thoughts as soon as I finished it, even though there were parts were confusing, I was like, I want to reread it and see and read it again. So to me, if I want to reread a book, it's an instant 5 stars. Unless I'm saying I want to reread it because I'm not sure it was as bad as I thought it was, then it may not get 5 stars.
Good policy to have.
That is good.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, we know you have to get back to work, back to the grind. So
Yes.
we'll let you go. Everyone, thanks for tuning in and watching and joining us on the read. And there was a few in the book club who weren't able to make it because of other obligations. So we missed you, but next time, hopefully you'll be able to join us. And then we'll be reading Between Two Fires in October.
Yes. Thank you, Steve and Brandy, for putting this together.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming by and chatting.
All right. We'll see you guys again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.